Check, check. All right. Well, thank you for having me. As I was introduced, I'm Erik Head of AI Partner Strategy for Anthropic. Thank you again, Megazone, for having us here. And please accept my apologies for delivering this presentation in English. So one of the things that you'll hear a lot in the field of AI is people talking about vibes. And so rather than think of this as a presentation in which it's important to get all the information, what I hope to deliver today is a vibe. And the vibe is to give you a sense of how Anthropic thinks about our technology and thinks about where we're going. So with that, we'll jump in. So just to introduce us, we are a company that came out of, it was founded by a group of people that left OpenAI, and they left in the hopes of pursuing a strategy of creating the safest, smartest models. And so our focus at Anthropic is not just intelligence or artificial intelligence, it is specifically safe superintelligence. And so it was founded just over 4 years ago. We're a very, very young company, but we've been growing incredibly quickly. We're now well over 1,000 employees, well on our way to 2,000, headquartered in San Francisco. And this group of 8 co-founders of Anthropic represents a lot of the kind of brightest lights in AI. It's people that helped write the foundational papers and people that have been pioneering AI safety. And so our purpose is to, quite ambitiously, to help the world make the transition to safe superintelligence, and to do it in a way that prioritizes our ability to incorporate this technology into our civilization in a way that is minimally disruptive and hopefully best for the people that adopt it. So I want to spend just a moment introducing the field of generative AI to make sure everyone has a foundation. First, generative AI is a science of creating models, in our case, large language models, that understand human language and can reason about it and reason about problems. And at Anthropic, we've been creating models since the very beginning of the company. And one of the most important things to know about Anthropic's journey to create more and more intelligent models is that our rate of creation of intelligence, our rate of model improvement, is the fastest in the world. It is faster than the other frontier labs. And so while we started from a slight disadvantage versus other companies at the frontier, we have rapidly closed that gap. And our latest model, Claude 3.7 Sonnet, we believe is the smartest, safest, and in particular the best coding model in the world. I want to just quickly describe some of the core capabilities of these models. First, they generate text. Second, they're able to generate code and to understand complex programs, problems, and also to solve them using programming language. They can answer questions about facts that they have memorized or facts that they look up based on outside information. They can reason through what they learn about. So the reasoning piece is especially important. This is what AI is especially excellent at. It understands the essence, the core ideas, not just the language, and is able to do useful things with that information. It also is what we call multimodal. It's able to understand not just text in multiple languages, but also images, image sequences, PDF documents, scans. It sees, in a sense, the way that humans do. And of course, that means that it's also able to understand things like handwriting and scans of images and, of course, PDFs. So what AI helps people do is to navigate complex problems. And this is the very first use that I personally had for AI. I used it to help me understand how to get through workflows, how to do, for example, configure a router or to solve a programming problem. And so it was my thought partner rather than something that replaced me. It helped me become better. And so what this can do in the enterprise is a set of core features that I have spent my entire career in information retrieval and information processing. And the ability for a computer to do these 5 things has been elusive for most of my career. And just recently, as these models have become incredibly smart, now these have become solved problems. And so a lot of what we're doing as an industry is to integrate these solutions into business applications that require them. So the ability to summarize a long document, that is now it seems like a common thing that AI does, but this was magic less than 5 years ago. Being able to extract concepts, to summarize a meeting recording and understand what people were talking about and what was most important. That's very difficult, but AI can do it very easily now. Detecting errors in documents, detecting when a contract is missing a section or is misdrafted. These are things, again, that were very difficult and are now relatively easy. Taking several documents and mixing them together and understanding information across all of the documents and then being able to give a summary to the user, that is another very powerful business application that we have just begun to tap the potential of. And then, of course, generating content. So helping people draft emails, helping them write reports, helping them write documents. These are things that are only at the beginning of delivering the level of efficiency that they will rise to. So many of you have heard of ChatGPT. Many of you have heard of Gemini. We at Anthropic, we have our own version of this. We call it Claude. Claude is a great way to use an AI that's very friendly and has a lot of powerful tools. And so that's available at claude.ai. And the reason that I bring up our particular entrant into this field, Claude, is to help describe Anthropic as a company. At the most fundamental level, we're a company that creates intelligent models. But the models by themselves are not useful unless you wrap them in more traditional software. So there are two main ways that we deliver the Claude models. The first one is what we call Claude for Enterprise. Fundamentally, Claude for Enterprise is about taking a company's data, taking its what we call tribal knowledge, or what it knows about itself, and connecting that information efficiently with an AI so that the AI isn't just smart, it's smart and it knows you. The second thing that we deliver is the Anthropic API. This is a way for developers, for enterprises, for really anybody that has the ability to write code, which is now everyone, to create products that sit on top of the Anthropic models and extend them to do useful things. So Claude for Enterprise, in a nutshell, is what very early in my career used to be called knowledge management. It's being able to understand what a company knows about itself. And so what we do with Claude for Enterprise is to connect to basically every data source at the organization to be able to retrieve the relevant information, sort of kind of RAG plus or graph RAG or knowledge graphs as it's come to be called. And to use this combination of indexing the company's information and being able to reason about the company's information to help employees onboard, to help people answer questions, to help them draft reports, just to help them understand what's going on as the information overload gets more and more. And the way that we do this is by connecting Claude to information sources using a technology that we invented at Anthropic called the Model Context Protocol. And the only thing to know about the Model Context Protocol is it is a connection. It's the glue of the artificial intelligence industry. It connects models over here on the left with information sources over here on the right. The information sources are things that the company uses to help it stay organized. It's customer relationship management, it's documents, it's source code, data warehouses, the company wikis, the way that it communicates. And the more of these systems that are integrated with the AI, the smarter the AI becomes. And it doesn't become smarter because the model gets smarter. It becomes smarter because it has access to the right context to solve the problem that you're giving it. Most recently, we have now created an extension to MCP that we call integrations. So I'm just curious, has anyone in this room used MCP? Just a hand or two? All right, great, excellent. So you've used MCP with what we call Claude Desktop, which is an application that runs on your computer. And this has been great for experimenting with MCP, for learning what it's capable of, seeing how to advance it. But it's not very good for deploying MCP connections in the enterprise at scale. And so the next thing that we've been implementing for MCP is what we call integrations. And integrations is the ability to use enterprise security to pass the OAuth credentials through the chain in order to use an MCP server with a secure enterprise client like Claude.ai or like any other chatbot that a company might make for itself. The critical piece here is that integrations provide security from end to end through the entire chain so that you can use remote MCP servers that have access to sensitive company data and to do so in a highly secure way. We've also recently created what we call a search agent. What a search agent does is a lot like what a human does when a human is conducting a search. For example, if you're searching for information on Google and you're trying to create a complex report, you might start with a very high-level query. For example, if I wanted to learn about Megazone, I might just search for Megazone, and then I'd get a set of 10 results. I might read a few of those pages. I might begin to understand Megazone's business a little bit. I might understand that it works as a cloud provider and a solutions integrator. And so then I would refine my search query. I might say MegazoneCloud, and then maybe MegazoneCloud AI. And then I would continue to sort of iterate and to make my search query more specific. And I would read the documents, and when I found something useful, I would add it to my set. And then eventually, I would go back and review all the documents that I found, and then try to build my report. And this is exactly what we've created a search agent to do. So instead of trying to build an index of everything and then to answer questions with the documents, Instead, what we do is we set an agent loose to go and do this kind of search and to do it in steps. And then when it's found enough information, it can take that information, bring it together, and perform that synthesis, that summarization that we talked about earlier, and create a useful report for the human. And it can do hours, maybe even days of research in a matter of minutes. So whenever I give one of these presentations, the first thing I do is I have Claude research the company I'm presenting for me, and it creates a complex report that is as good as any executive briefing I've had. And it does this in a matter, again, of just minutes. As I mentioned before on the slide with MCP, a big part of what we're doing is trying to integrate these AI systems that are better and better at harnessing the AI and providing excellent user experiences, ways that humans can interface with AI more naturally, more elegantly, and we connect these with companies' workspaces so that they can use the company's data. A big part of the way that we do this is to build an index in advance of this information. And so we bring together two different technologies. One is the sort of RAG pre-indexing, as our previous speaker spoke about. And the other is this search agent, or agentic search, as people refer to it. And so this combination of the two is very powerful for being effective as a partner, as a coworker alongside humans. So I want to talk a little bit about Model Context Protocol for the folks in the room who haven't had a chance to use it yet. Now, this is a bit of a dense slide, but the most important thing to understand is that there are two sides of this equation. There are MCP clients. These are the AI wrappers that want the information. So an MCP client is what wraps around the large language model, and the MCP server is what has the information. So the clients need the information, the servers have it. Now you know how MCP works. And the reason that we created MCP is that this is a pervasive problem in AI. Connecting the right data to AI is a very difficult technical challenge. And in the earliest days of frontier models, the way that companies solved this challenge was to build individual integrations between AI frontier models and their own data. And so each of these rows in this chart here is an individual development project. And as you can imagine, this is very inefficient, it's very brittle, it doesn't scale very well, it's just a lot of work. And so we thought there has to be a better way. So we created a technology to use a standards-based approach to connect between the MCP clients, the things that want the information, and the MCP servers. And so what this ended up creating is a standards-based way to interchange different LLM models, to use different wrappers or different chatbots, even agents like coding agents, with every single MCP server that has been created. And it just so happens that this we released this standard at roughly the time in the development of these frontier models when they learned how to write very high-quality code. And so the result of this is an explosion of MCP servers. And so now there are MCP servers wrapping basically every major business system. It's possible to create your own server wrapping your own system in a matter of hours using a tool like Claude Code. And so early on, we had a couple of software development partners that adopted MCP. And then I worked a bit with a company called Block, a major financial technology company in the United States. And they said, you know, we think this is a good idea. We're going to try it. And then within a matter of months, Google and OpenAI both announced that they were going to adopt the standard that we created at Anthropic. And so we're happy to say that as Anthropic, we have helped develop the standard that is beginning to unlock the next generation of AI, which is not just smart models, but smart models that are connected with the places where you keep your data and with the real, live, living, breathing organizations, the up-to-the-minute data that is otherwise very difficult to pre-index. So rather than just having these smart frontier models as an island where they only are informed by what they know, by their training data, instead they can now connect to every different business system that you have. They can connect on the fly, they can perform as a search agent, and they're able to be just much smarter and more effective thanks to this technology. So this is a technology that exists on the way to building what we think of as enterprise agents. And we have a particular philosophy as Anthropic, as the developers of the smartest, safest models, of the three pillars of what makes up enterprise agents. The first pillar is you must have the smartest model. And we believe that this is us. But one of the most important capabilities of the smartest model is that it must be able to do what is variously referred to as extended thinking or reasoning or chain of thought or scratchpad. But basically, those are all slightly fancy ways of saying the model should have an opportunity to think for itself before it begins to take action. And this is what humans do when they're encountering a complex problem. instead of immediately beginning to give an answer, which is usually not a good idea, instead the AI is able to think a bit on its own, out of view often of the human. And in doing so, it's able to make the quality of its reasoning, the quality of its understanding much higher. And this is something that as a developer has been very unintuitive to me. But basically the upshot of this is that when you let the model express itself with more tokens, it simply becomes smarter. So more thinking equals better thinking. That's the first pillar, is extended thinking models. The second pillar is what we just talked about. It is MCP and the connections between these models and all of the enterprise systems. Now, if you have very smart models and very well-connected models, you absolutely must have safe models. And model safety is something that a lot of people talk about in the abstract, but you can almost think of model safety as the inverse of business liability. The more you invest in model safety, the better choices that the model will make when you empower it to do things. And that's what agents are about. They're not about giving you answers, they're about taking actions. One example of a model safety question is, if you have a coding agent that is writing code on behalf of your organization, that coding agent may have very subtle preferences. It may decide that it likes to write high-performance code, but not very secure code. And a safer model may decide that it would rather write highly secure code and optimized for performance later. Now, if you compound that preference for safety or for performance across thousands of check-ins, thousands of code commits, you can wind up in a situation where the company has taken on a degree of liability that it didn't anticipate. And that's why the third pillar is so important. So you need smart models, you need to connect them with your information, and you need to make sure that they're the safest they can be. What is an agent? Well, an agent is a system that understands its environment, it builds a plan of action, it figures out what tools it should use to execute that plan, and then it works in steps in order to solve the problem and deliver the result. And so a lot of the way that people have been thinking about building systems around AI has been about this model that kind of began with ChatGPT, which is you give it a prompt and it gives you a response. Now, this is very helpful. It's very effective. You can do amazing things with this type of interaction model, but it's fundamentally very passive. Instead of being about taking action, a chatbot that gives you prompts and responses, it tends to help you have the information to solve the problem, but it doesn't take action on your behalf. And so instead, the new paradigm that we see with agents is that they accept a directive and they work in this loop of planning, acting, and reflecting, and then they deliver you an outcome. Now, this is very powerful because the effect of using an agent is not to have new information, it's that the state of the world has changed as a result of the agent's actions. And so this is the beginning of a very powerful new era in which we empower machines to act on our behalf, and we expect them to make smart choices, to make safe choices, and to make the humans that work alongside them more efficient and more productive. And so this paradigm of accepting a directive and delivering an outcome is the focus of the next generation of building agents. So to kind of pull this together, MCP servers over here on the left, again, these are where the data lives. And the objective of MCP is to get the data in these systems on the left over to Claude so that it can reason about it and it can have the right context to solve the problem. So MCP servers are about getting information from the servers. On the right here, we have agents. And these are things like, just to demystify it a bit, a personal assistant or a travel agent, an organization or a person that makes a booking on your behalf, or a banker, a person that executes a financial transaction on your behalf with your confidence that they'll do it correctly, or a software developer, a person who takes requirements, starting with the software development lifecycle, and then converts that into code. And so the idea that we have been pursuing at Anthropic and that we are doing alongside the industry is to get information from the servers and to do useful things with agents. This one slide, I believe, expresses where we are going with AI and where the industry is going today. It's a lot of complex topics. It's a lot of block diagrams and sort of information flows. But fundamentally, it's about getting information from the servers, giving it to the AI, and having it do useful things with agents. So let me give you an example of a practical agent. We've created a product at Anthropic called Claude Code. Before I get into Claude Code, I'll just talk a bit about where we think agents are going in the future. So today, Claude is an assistant, or actually I should say in 2024, ancient history by AI terms. So the first sort of paradigm was the assistant paradigm. You give it a prompt, it gives you a response. The next paradigm that we are building today is Claude collaborating. It's working alongside you, it's delivering work products. Now, one of the things that's most important to remember about AI is that it's not like normal software products. A lot of software, you kind of see the broad strokes of what you're building very early on. And a lot of what it takes to deliver software to the enterprise is to build all sorts of layers of enterprise capabilities and security, and to wrap your core innovation in all the things that make it usable for an enterprise. AI is very different. AI is changing fundamentally on an exponential curve, and so it's becoming exponentially smarter. Even as it sits at the center of these very complex systems, the brain at the middle of it is becoming exponentially more intelligent. And so we believe that only in a matter of a few years, as we ride up this exponential curve, that we will see examples of Claude not just being very productive and very effective in the enterprise, but actually pioneering discoveries, pioneering software breakthroughs, building new architectures. And so part of what we're doing at Anthropic is trying to build the right harnesses, the right scaffolding, to be able to take the increasingly intelligent models and let them help humans do more and more complex and more pioneering things. So Claude Code, very simply, is a software development agent. And I was fortunate enough in my early days at Anthropic to work with the team that produced Claude Code. And I'll never forget the conversation that I had with the engineer that developed the first version. Being a project manager, I said, can you help me understand the scope of what you're trying to do? What is this problem, or what is this product going to solve? And he kind of smiled at me and he said, we're going to automate all software development. And I said, surely not. That's a crazy idea. That's much too complex a problem. Who's the ideal customer for this? And he says, all developers, even people who don't think they're developers. And I kind of shook my head and I said, this doesn't make sense to me, but I'm going to try to get with the program. And sure enough, as we begin to wrap the latest Claude models, which at that point had become very good at coding, in this sort of agent framework, lo and behold, it was able to take on very complex tasks throughout the software development lifecycle. And part of what makes this product so powerful is that it's probably, I think, up until very recently, when our competitors in other frontier labs released, I believe, somewhat of a copycat product, it was the first software development agent that was produced by a frontier lab in a very tight feedback loop between the development of the models and the development of the coding product. And so the core idea was that when we learn what is working well in a coding agent, we can go back to the model training team and we can incorporate what we learn into the next generation of the model. And so there's a flywheel, there's a virtuous cycle between our development of Claude Code and our development of coding models. And every time the models get better, Claude Code gets better. And when Claude Code gets better, the models get better. And so we believe that this virtuous cycle is powering us towards the ability to work across the entire software development lifecycle. So one of my favorite things to do with Claude Code, and I still try to write code because it's fun, but also it's very exciting to see this develop. The most exciting thing for me is to drop Claude Code into a very complex enterprise code base. I'm talking millions of lines, maybe weak documentation, maybe not very good code factoring. And you say, Claude, can you help me understand what's happening in this code base? Now, this is something that might take a very skilled engineer, maybe 6 months of ramp-up time to understand an enterprise code base, but Claude is able to do it in a matter of minutes. Now, having understood that code base, it's now able to make meaningful contributions on design. And another thing that is very easy to lose track of as you think about these models is that they're not just smart at one thing, they're smart at just about everything. And so when you ask Claude to design a piece of user interface, just say a React component to be able to present some information to the user, it has taste, it has good design sensibilities. It isn't just producing code that runs and compiles, it's producing user interface components that humans can use right away. And so in a sense, Claude has the ability to create on-demand customized user interfaces. And I think this is an incredibly powerful breakthrough in computing in general. So it understands the code base, it's able to do useful designs. It can, of course, build the code and implement the code that, or the designs it comes up with. And then it's able to do one of the things that as a developer is just most magical, which is it helps me with deployment. And the fun part of writing code often is building up to the first moment when you see it work. And after that moment, a lot of what you're doing is kind of chores and toil and drudgery. And so a big part of what Claude Code is able to do is correctly execute the steps on the way to taking your innovation and delivering it to customers in an efficient way. So these last steps of the software development lifecycle, of deploying, of supporting, of building unit tests, of making the code maintainable, of helping people with, in some cases, building the tests that test the tests, all of these things that developers don't especially like to do and are often difficult to hire people for, these are things that the agents are already taking on today. So what we believe is happening in software development now is that it's possible to give the worst work, the most unpleasant software development tasks to coding agents. This is things like, implementing strong typing. If there are any developers in the room, that probably sent a shiver up your spine, but implementing something like that is not fun, it's very risky, and it's the kind of thing that Claude Code can do in a day instead of a developer taking months. It's able to do framework migrations, to move from one API to another one, to move from one language version to another, even to port code from one language to a different language. Another thing that it does that developers are notoriously bad at is it is very, very insistent on keeping your commenting, keeping your documentation up to date across parts of your code base. And so the way that developers can work with this system is to get in these feedback loops where you basically are coaching the machine the way that you would coach a junior developer towards implementing the right patterns. Essentially, every developer is a manager of developers now. And so get into the feedback loops, give the debug information to the model and let it sort out the problems. And then importantly, if you need a tool to solve your problem, instead of saying, oh gosh, I don't have this tool, maybe I'll look on the internet, maybe I'll write it myself. If you need the tool, Claude will write it for you on the spot in a matter of minutes. And so for a lot of my career, software development has been kind of reaching a new point in your project, getting stuck in some way, doing a lot of research, reading documentation, building debugging environments, and then finally you unblock yourself and you proceed forward. The rate that Claude Code can unblock you is incredibly fast. All right, so I'm getting the wrap it up here, and so I'll just skip to the very last slide. All right, we're going to skip over a little bit of the bedrock stuff here, but I think what I want to wrap up with here is the idea that we are rapidly advancing across many, many different domains. And it can be difficult to keep track of all this stuff simultaneously. And so the thing to keep in mind is that when these models become better at one thing, they're actually becoming better at all things. Our CEO referred to this recently as spooky entanglement. It's a way of thinking about the model generalizing across these information domains. And so we are on this exponential curve, and the models are getting faster and smarter all the time. And the best way to think of what's happening next is something called Jevons paradox that I recommend you look up. And Jevons paradox describes a lot of moments in the history of technology where something becomes incredibly cheap and efficient. And people say, oh no, if for example, a steam engine is now 1/10 of the cost to operate, people won't need steam engines so much, and they'll drop their spending by an order of magnitude. And what happens instead is that when a new technology becomes exponentially cheaper, instead people use exponentially more of it. So the way to think about this moment as a business leader is not to think, how can I save costs or how can I increase efficiency? That's an important thing. Those are good ideas. But the way to think of it is, what would your company do with 1,000 times as much brain power as it has access to today? And that, I think, is most exciting about this AI frontier that we find ourselves on. And that's what we're working on at Anthropic. So thank you all very much.